Hello my lovelies, so this is Lizzie from Love From Lizi, and today I am bringing you finally the February 19 10 cards 1 kit video. Now I'm showing you here, as I always do at the beginning of my videos, how I make my card bases. They're all exactly the same. I do usually a top fold, sometimes a side fold, but I just split my cardstock lengthways down the middle and then score it in half on my EK Tools scoreboard. So I won't show you that again because everybody knows how to score a card. So I'm jumping in with card 1 here, and I'm just taking one of the cutter parts. Usually when I come up to a kit, I like to ease myself in gently with a card that I know that I'm going to be very comfortable with. It just makes it that much easier for me to sort of familiarise myself with the colours and take on making 10 cards. So here you've seen me just taking the specialty piece, which is like a white pearlescent, and I've just trimmed off 1/4 of an inch off both the top and the bottom, and then popped that into the embossing folder that came in the kit and run that through my Sizzix machine. And here I'm just popping some Scotch mountain tape on the back there. It's a shame that the camera doesn't really pick up how sparkly this paper is. It really is very pretty. And here I've taken that cutter part piece and turned the mirror card over onto the back. This is the embossed mirror, and snipped a bit out. Now if I'd have been more frugal, I would have cut some of the centre of that out to make it go a little bit further because it's not seen. But I didn't at this point, so I used some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive just to stick it on the front there. I wanted something that was going to hold in amongst all of the grain, and then I'm popping some more 3M tape on the back, and that is sort of the basis of the card, a very quick and simple card. And here I'm just popping some of the gems on the front, just 3 gems, the rule of 3, and that is the end of my first card. So that's me starting off with the kit, and it's a lovely sentiment. Time spent laughing is time spent with the gods, and it's a Japanese proverb. So okay, now I'm on to card 2, and here I've picked up one of the little wooden pieces. Now I would recommend, if you want to make this sort of a card, that you take your time with it. When I sit down, I sort of have to finish and start the card in one sitting. Otherwise I sort of lose my crafty mojo with it. I don't manage to pick a card back up again. So I inked up my feather, and then I did it at the beginning to let it have time to dry, but it still needed time with the heat gun. So if you've got the opportunity to do that, then let that dry overnight. Give it a chance to really dry off nicely. So anywho, I have now taken one of the pattern papers. It was peacock feathers, by the way, the distress oxide that I used on the feather. And that colour matched really nicely with this particular pattern paper. So I've popped it onto a dark card base, dark blue card base, and I've just run peel-offs around the edge and mitered the corners. So it just gives it that sort of picture frame look. And here I've taken that scrap of embossed gold, specialty cardstock, and I've sort of held it up behind a cutter part, and then cut some little strips. This is a really good way to sort of mat and layer if you haven't got enough to do a complete mat, because it gives you the impression it's just a little bit of interest. So yes, it looks like the middle piece is missing, but you know, as far as the receiver is concerned, that's exactly how the card was supposed to look. And then having glued that down again with some Nouveau Deluxe adhesive, I'm just popping some foam tape onto the back there, and I do pop a tiny weeny piece in the middle just to give it that little bit of extra support. And then I'm just removing the backing pieces, and I lay a non-inked feather on top just to make sure it goes in the right place and I don't get inky fingers. So as you can see here, I did use my heat tool just to speed up the process. Do be careful because these pieces are wood and they do start to smoke if you heat them for too long. Ask me how I know how. And now you're seeing me with my quickie glue pen, and I'm just drawing in some very basic feather lines, like peacock feather lines. This feather works perfectly well without any of this. It was just something that I wanted to give a go to. So making sure that my ink was completely dry at this point, I just drew in some sort of like an eye at the top, and then a stem down the middle, and a few sort of feathery bits that overlined one another. And then popped that onto a coffee filter and poured some of the loose glitter that came in the kit just over the top. And as you can see, using my tweezers to keep my fat little fingers out of the way. But it does make it easier to manage because I could sort of tap the glitter around and not worry about my fingers spreading the glue. I must note I did let the glue set a little bit so that it was tacky by the time that I'd come to actually feathering that up. And I popped a few Nuvo drops on there as well, which you'll see in the still shots at the end. Okay, card 3. Now I wanted to go off of the colour reservation, shall we say, because this kit is very heavily navy and teal. Obviously it's peacock themed as well as the Art Deco, but I put in this pistachio coloured feather, so I wanted to find a way to integrate it, and I thought what better way than to use it with the yellow and the black. Now I've left all of this in here just to show you about how I weed out the dyes from this dye. It is a very intricate dye, and I haven't run it through the die cutting machine with greaseproof paper, which I'm sure would help it. I haven't torn any of my dyes pulling them out this way, and I just sort of, I use the pick and guide it along the gullies of the dye, sort of encouraging the paper out. But yeah, a greaseproof sheet, or I think a tumble dryer sheet also does the same job. So here you've seen me pop a little bit of glue on the back of that frame, and I've laid the feather sort of through the whole of the frame, and I use my craft pick just to encourage all of the frowns or the strands out on top of the frame. And here I do it again with a little bit of the extra glue just to fix that down, and then I just give it a good firm press. And here I really like this Hotsy Totsy. I thought that was really very cute, but that diamond runs off the top of the printed page, and I didn't really want to waste it, so I just snipped the top and the bottom off of the diamond, so then it became, oh gosh, I don't even know what that shape is officially called. Anybody wants to help me out in the comments, I'd be very grateful. And then I just pop that up on some foam adhesive just to give it a little bit of lift away from the card base, and pop that down on the bottom corner, but not before attaching my card panel onto my card base. Please do let me know in the comments which of the cards is your favourite. I have tried to include a few different ones this time, but as always, I'm always very interested to hear what it is that you enjoy seeing. Is it sort of like the super clean and simple, like the first couple of cards that I've made, or is it something a bit later on that is more intricate and perhaps has more of a technique to it? But yes, so I've attached all those bits and pieces down, and I'm just adding a few gems in just for a little bit of sparkle, and I added them on the diamonds of the Hotsy Totsy, and then also onto the triangles of the die. And that is the end of that card. After I cheated, actually, I apologise, I cheated and added some of my black glitter peel-offs, which obviously weren't in the kit, but I just wanted to give it that little finishing touch on either edge, just to frame it off. And I just trim those little bits up, and then that is the card all done and dusted. So card 4, there is one sheet of what I call alcohol marker friendly cardstock in the kit, but it's also brilliant for blending on. So here I've picked out 5 distress oxides. I have antique linen, mustard seed, cracked pistachio, peacock feathers and blueprint sketch, and I super sped that ink blending up to 8 times real life. And all I did was just introduce colour. There was no rhyme or reason to it, and I have just spritzed it with water, and I'm using my craft pick as it dries to hold it flat so that it doesn't warp up too much. That was me just testing the embossing powder to make sure that the ink was all dry, because there's nothing worse than when you want to heat emboss something, you pour the embossing powder on and it sticks everywhere. So the ink was all dry, and I took an acrylic block, and I just took the little feather from the stamp set and stamped 3 peacock feathers in Versamark ink towards the top left hand corner. And here I am taking the oyster pearl embossing powder and just heat set those 3 feathers, so they're really subtle, but it's just a nice little bit of shine. And in the bottom right hand corner I heat emboss the frame, again using my anti-static powder tool, then Versamark, and then using golden crown embossing powder. And then once I'd heat embossed that and it was all melted, I put in the Just Because sentiment. It's much easier to line up, and of course if you've heat set the frame already, you haven't got the worry that you're going to knock all the powder out of place. So when I'm also, I'd like to know at this point, when I am heat embossing something that is detailed, I will always heat from the back, and I do show it in this video, that which I do manage to get in camera. but from the back it is less likely to send those little pieces of embossing powder flying off all over the front of your card. Now here I've left this in. That was quite a big mistake on my part in this card, although it has turned out to be one of my favourites. I have some stick it here, and in my mind it wasn't stick it at all, it was masking paper. So I don't know, perhaps it was silly o'clock at the time. Since I've got back from Creativation, my sleep has been up the wall. I tend to keep falling asleep with Piggy when I'm putting him to bed, and then waking up in the wee hours, which is meaning I'm not working in the evenings as I usually do, and therefore not being able to get my cards out as quick this month as I usually would. But anyhow, you've seen me die cut the centre of the die from what I thought was masking paper, and then use my T-square ruler to line up some masking tape to continue on the top and the bottom of that. And here I have the peacock feathers oxide ink again, and I've blended more heavily on the outer edges, fading into the middle. Now this is obviously where I've realised that it's stick it, and I was tempted to put it in the bin and start again, but in a bid to show that nothing's a failure, it's just, you've just got to find a workaround, I got my Tombow Mono sand eraser and I removed all the adhesive, and you wouldn't have even known. So it is possible. Now here I've taken some of the gold specialty cardstock that came in the kit. This is just the mirror cardstock, and I've die cut the frame again. Now I didn't die cut the whole frame because I knew that I wanted to snip some of the bits of the frame away, and this is just in a bid to show you that just because it looks like it's one kind of frame, it doesn't mean that is the be all and end all that it can be. So I've snipped it down so it's actually quite a lot smaller, but I've left the inner frame exactly the same size, which was why I masked off that area in the first instance. So here I've laid the frame onto my card front in my Misty, removed it away again, and having laid the peacock feather bang in the middle, exactly where I want it to be. So now I'm anti-static powdering and Versamark inking this feather up, and then going to heat set that also in the golden crown. And I did give this a good double stamp to make sure that it did set properly. And here I've taken my BG09 Copic marker, and I've just coloured one of my gems. One of the joys about Copic markers is they colour pretty much anything, so you're able to get things to run in line. Now here I'm taking my peel-offs, and this is where I make really good use of the peel-offs being different widths, and for some reason I've managed to pop this portion of the video into slow motion, so I do apologise. As I say, it's gone midnight here. I've only been awake again for another hour, having woken up from putting Carson to bed, so yes, everything seems to be a little bit more difficult than usual. I'm looking forward to getting my sleep pattern back to where it should be. Okay, so I do apologise, this is the last portion of the super slow-mo, but you're getting a very good look at how I do my peel-offs, and I just created like a little pattern in that masked off area. Having popped some glue on the back of that frame, I did let it set a little bit so that it was tacky, and then gave it a good firm press down. And now with my craft knife, I'm going in and, excuse my head, I apologise for that, but I'm going in and using the knife to cut away the extra pieces of the peel-offs, which is much easier to do after than beforehand. So here I've chosen my sentiment, which is with love, and I'm just Versamark inking that directly onto the card base. You know, the previous card was a single layer, and this is also a single layer card, and I don't often make single layers, so I was quite pleased with myself that I managed to do 2 in a row. So that is the end of that card, and now we're moving into card 6. So card 6, it is quite out of my comfort zone, I suppose. I knew what I wanted the card to look like, and it came out nothing like it whatsoever. So, you know, it makes for interesting watching, I suppose. But this is the Peacock Feathers Oxide again, and I'm just dragging that around the edge of this paper. It looked a little bit mixed media-esque, but I wanted it to sit away from the ivory card base. So I've taken some of the Deco Mash, and I had a little bit of a mare with my glue dots dispenser. I don't know what I've done to it, but it had glue dots coming out all over the place. But glue dots are a really good way to hold down things that are a bit tricky like this, or like ribbon, other bits and bobs that don't necessarily want to stay put particularly. And I put them on either end on the reverse, and then on the wider piece at the side I put a few on each side, just so that I could squash that down and it wouldn't bow out from the front of the card. And here I've selected 3 of the banner stickers, and I've put some of the teal ribbon behind 2 of them, the 2 without a sentiment. And then I've taken, this is just a standard fishtail, and I've taken the waste piece that was left on the sticker sheet and stuck it on the reverse side of the other end, so that I could make that a banner fishtail, like both ends having that peak in it. I have de-stickered the sentiment one and popped some foam tape behind it, and then I'm layering that up on top of the little banner that I've created. And again, I'm putting some Nouveau adhesive on the back, just because of the mesh. I really wanted to make sure that it did stick very well, and having that wet glue just gave it that little extra attempt at holding. I put some foam tape up behind the other 2 with the ribbon, and then I popped some glue dots on top of the foam, again just in a bid to try to make sure that this survives being posted to the receiver. And then I popped those in at top and bottom, and then attached my card panel onto my card base, leaving the area where the deco mash was free from foam, so that it didn't bulk out the card too much. And apart from encouraging a glue dot to hide a little bit better, that is the end of card number 6. So here we're on to card 7, and this is one that I'm quite proud of, because it's something that I haven't done for a very, very long time. So here I've taken one of the pattern pieces of paper, and I'm just cutting a card front to attach onto my base, and it's merely 4 inches by 5 1/4. And this pattern paper has got sort of like a geometric flower to it, so I fussy cut out one of the yellow flowers, leaving all of the green aspect in as if they were petals. And then here I am snipping out 4 of these diamonds that are blank, and they do all need to be complete diamonds, so any of the ones that run off the edge of the page wouldn't work. And here I am doing some folding, so you fold back corner to corner. I hope I haven't just done that too quickly. You fold it in half, so back side to back side, and then you fold it in half the other way, back side to back side, and then you fold it into the front diagonally, corner to corner, and then it will sit together in a nice diamond. Now this is me just slightly fussy cutting a little bit further the flower that I fussy cut earlier, just so that I could encourage it to take some shape, otherwise it would have remained flat. I've poked a hole using my craft pick through the centre of the flower, and then woven in some of the stamen, I suppose, and trimmed the stamen down because they were super long. And here I'm using some clear foam squares. These are the Cool Tack ones, and I'm just popping one on the inside of the back of my squares, just so that the back is held down and it doesn't open up inside the card. And then I'm using some Scotch Super Hold tape just to hold those 4 in place, and before I tape the 4th one I lace the stamen through the middle and then use a load of tape on the back. It's not particularly elegant on the back, but it will hold. And then I use some little scrapbook adhesive foam squares on the back and attach that onto the sort of the top portion of the front of my card base. And here I'm running just a couple of peel-offs, wider on the outside, narrower on the inside, along either edge of the card fronts. And then for a sentiment, I really didn't want to overpower anything, so I just picked one of the small ones from the sticker sheet saying "Sitting Pretty." And those pieces of stamen that I cut off from the flower at the top, I've just popped onto the back in sort of a little spray, and then used some double-sided sticky tape just to hold those in place. And then again, using some little foam squares, I attach my little sentiment to stand proud. So that is the end of card 7. I hope you like that one. That is one of my favourites. I think it's been a while since I've made a card like that. So here's card 8, and of course it wouldn't be a Love From Lizi 10 cards 1 kit without a shaker card on my part. So I've taken one of the cutter parts and I used a circle die to cut out the sentiment that's in the middle. And then I've used some double-sided sellotape because I didn't want the glue to all splodge out, and I've attached some acetate on over that circle. Now here I'm having to cut some super skinny strips of foam tape because I knew that I wanted to trim down the cutter part further still, but obviously I didn't want all the sequins to fall out. So this was an experiment. I did the foam tape before I trimmed the card front just to make sure that it would actually work. So I've attached down my very skinny bit of foam tape, leaving no gaps anywhere around the edge. Make sure it gets a good firm press down. And then on the side that it needs to be skinniest, I held the scissors first to make sure it would work. But what I did was I cut the teal away from the outer edge because I wanted to use this teal patterned paper and I didn't want it to get lost. And having that ivory frame around the edge of the topper meant that it would sort of stand proud somewhat. So you just use my T-square ruler and my scissors to cut out that card front, and I'm just using the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive again. You can see if something's on my craft desk, it will get used. It's I don't think I used my ATG in this at all, and that's just because it was further out of my reach. But here you'll see that I've just laid down the circle to make sure it's exactly where I get it in exactly the place I want it to be in. And then I attach that onto the front using the Nouveau Deluxe adhesive again, and I give that a good firm press because you really need to make sure that is stuck down so that no sequins try and travel behind it. I pour my sequins on top of the circle so that now I can focus on positioning over the circle correctly, but also so that it's straight to the edge, the top aspect of the shaker. And here I've just taken some of the black specialty pearlescent cardstock that was in the kit and die cut that very thin sort of page breaker, I suppose. And the stick it would have been very appropriate at this point. It's a shame I couldn't use it for what it was intended. That would have been useful, wouldn't it? But I've attached it down with a Deluxe Nouveau adhesive, which is great. And then again, I've just popped one of the widest peel-offs on the outer edges, and that is the end of card 9. So here we are. Oh, that was card 8. I do apologise. Card 9 here now. I have taken some of the mint pearlescent cardstock and used it as a card base, so to free me this teal piece of cardstock, because this technique on the pearlescent would be very risky because Versamark on the pearlescent wants to slide. It doesn't want to sit still. So what you've seen me do there is put Versamark on the sides that has the black print of the embossing powder. So when you're looking at this embossed image, it's in between the raised areas. And then I'm just using my Rainbow Wishes embossing powder, which is a really super sparkly one, but also clear. And so heat setting all of that. And again, the camera really doesn't do it justice. It's got such a lovely shine to it. Anywho, here I am now using the Peacock. I knew that I had to use this beauty at some point, and again I've just heat set her onto the remnant of that cardstock. Again, heat setting from the reverse to make sure that the detail isn't lost by blowing all of the embossing powder all over the room. And then having set her, I mean, she's so shiny and pretty, she's gorgeous. And then I fussy cut her out, not to the same degree that Scott did. I mean, I think he deserves a medal for that. But so she's been, oh, I say she, we all know that it's a he, but I can't help it when something's so pretty, I want to call it a she. And I've taken one of the stickers here, and I'm putting some Deluxe Nouveau adhesive on the back, simply because it's embossed. It just gives it a better opportunity to stay stuck on there. I did trim off the edges because there was too much yellow in it for the colour that I wanted in this card. And then using some mounting tape on the reverse side of the embossed panel, popping that up onto my pearlescent card base, and then again popping some foam onto the back of my very pretty little feather. And because it's going to be going on top of all of that raised area, I did pop some glue on top of the foam just to give it that extra opportunity to stay stuck. And here I'm popping some of the gems into the eyes of the feathers and also over the peacock's eye. Here I'm tapping some of the powder out of my anti-static powder tool onto the back of the Sitting Pretty sticker. This just means that if this gets sent in the post and it gets a bit squashed, that it's not going to get stuck onto the card front at a funny angle. It just means that it will stay as it's intended. And then foam taped again and a little bit of extra glue just to give that an extra secure hold. And that is the end of card number 9. Card number 10, and this one I really wanted to use the frame stamps that came in the kit, because I was really very excited when putting this stamp set together, and I don't feel like this has been used anywhere near enough. So I'm on the remnant of the pearlescent mint cardstock, anti-static powder, Versamark, and then heat embossing the warm navy embossing powder. And I've chosen a sticker that I want to have sit sort of in the middle, and I've laid it on there very gently and then repositioned the stamp at the top. Again, anti-static powder, Versamark, and then heat setting again in warm navy, that top frame. The joy of the Mini Misty is being able to pick it up and actually give it a squeeze. I do find that so much easier than pushing down on my desk, because I sit at my desk. So anyhow, they're both heat set, and I loosely cut that out, and now I'm using my trimmer to make sure that my edges are all lovely and straight and at right angles to one another. And now here, using my tweezers, I position that sticker down in between the frames, and I'm using my scissors just to snip out that little bit of extra green in the middle. I mean, that could remain by all means, but I just wanted to give it a little more interest. You could also do this with a craft knife if you'd rather do it that way. And then I use my corner chomper just to snip around those 4 outer corners. And this pattern paper is the same as the pattern that's in the background of this sticker, behind where it says "Pulling on the Ritz, Girls Night Out, Dressed to Impress." And you can't really see it in this from this angle, but the paper has got sort of a distressed edge that's a bit darker. So once I'd cut it out, to me it was glaringly obvious. So I got out my black soot Distress Oxide and just went around the edges on that, just to sort of make it all marry in, and then just glued that onto the front of my card. Gave it a nice press. The joy of wet glue is that you can move it around. If you don't stick it in exactly the right place, you have got the opportunity to shimmy it a little bit into where it's supposed to be. Now here I've taken one of the black feathers, and my black feathers were quite long, so I just trimmed the stem and pulled away the extra sort of like feathery bits that wanted to come away. And here I'm sort of almost combing the feather so that all of the frowns stick out as they should be doing. And then here I'm just going in with my 3M tape and just going around the centre of the feather. I'm sure it's got a technical term, but again, just so that I'm not creating a big bulky bit in the middle of the card. Remove all of those backing pieces, try to make sure that none of the little feathery pieces float back into the adhesive on the back of the foam tape. And then flip that over and centre it onto my card. And it is slightly lower than centre, just because there's all of the feathery bits coming off at the top. So they are my 10 cards, and these are my leftovers. I have this full sheet of cut aparts. There's only that one with a bit out the middle. I've still got all of those pretty much. Lots of stickers, some pearlescent. I still have a bit of the teal card base. Then specialty, I keep everything because I'm a hoarder. Con Marie wouldn't, she'd have a field day with me. I forgot about the vinyl, unfortunately. I've still got 6 full sheets of patterned paper, and I didn't exhaust one completely, so there's still 6 scraps worth. The embossing folder's obviously forevers. Then I've got the deco mash, the dies, the stamps, the peel-offs. I still have one feather. I also have lots of the ribbon and 2 of the stamen, and then I have 1 feather and more than half of the gems, my Nuvo drops, the glitter, and lots of sequins. So you add some more cardstock in and there is plenty to make with. Tools, I've used my Misty foam tape scoreboard, various oxides, my Versamark, some foam squares in clear and white, some of my embossing powders, the Nuvo glue, my T-square ruler, scissors, glue dots, the corner chomper, the Nuvo scoop, so the sand eraser, my bone folder, various glues, the BG09 Copic marker, Heffy tape, my heat tool, my die cut machine, circle dies. So there's a few extra bits and pieces, but hopefully nothing that is too untoward and that isn't in your craft room. Thank you ever so much for sticking with me till the end. Please do let me know which has come up as your favourite. The design team have all been waiting for me, so there should be a mass influx of videos coming up shortly for you with inspiration for this kit. It is sold out, but some of the add-ons are still available, so you may be able to fashion some bits together of sorts if you so wish. Thank you ever so much, and sneak peeks of the next kit will be starting next week. So until next time, do take care and happy paper crafting. Bye!